all over a bad lane change. The officer lost his job. He was in part a victim too, wasn't he? A victim of his training. Expect the worst, which is what we hear constantly in our society since 9/11. And then act on what you suspect. She broke the law. But she lost her life because she didn't signal when she changed lanes in order to make room for a police officer to pass. To the officer, she seemed to be a criminal. She fit the profile of a criminal, a potentially dangerous criminal. She was agitated. She was jumpy. She was irritable. She was confrontational. She was volatile. All true. But why? Did anybody ask why? In the aftermath of her death, it was revealed that she had had 10 previous encounters with police over the course of her adult life. That is not uncommon in the African American community, you all know that. 5 of those 10 were for traffic tickets. Which, by the way, left her with almost $8,000 in outstanding traffic ticket fines. Excuse me. Is that significant to a recent college grad? She had tried to commit suicide the year before, after the loss of her baby. She had numerous cut marks running up and down one of her arms. We all know how people cut themselves when they're depressed. In one of her weekly video posts on social media, she posted this, quote, "I apologize. I'm so sorry, my kings and queens. It's been 2 long weeks since I spoke to you. I've been missing in action, but I gotta be honest with you. I'm suffering. I'm suffering from something that some of you can relate to. It's a bit of depression as well as PTSD. I've been really stressed out these past couple of weeks." So in today's gospel lesson, we find our Sandra, whose life story is associated with the man of the 5 words in verse 16. Now he was a Samaritan. All of Jesus' religious upbringing, all of Jesus' devotion to Levitical laws of Moses, they are, after all, God's commandments, had trained him to be very suspicious of this man, this stranger who had violated the law. You might say, by approaching Jesus, he didn't stay in his lane. A very narrow lane that was prescribed by religion. His disease, don't come near us, and his violation of God's law, that's the final straw. He moved out of that very narrow lane by even speaking to Jesus. How dare he? I could cite you to law. John 4:9, Psalm 1:1, and so on. Now he was a Samaritan. That immediately describes a person Jesus should have judged as a criminal, clearly a lawbreaker, and by virtue of those things, an enemy of God. Have mercy on us. What would Jesus do? What would you do? Abandon your religious training? Violate the Levitical law of God? And why would you put yourself, given those things, at such personal risk for Him? Why would you get out of your lane? Because you have to, in order to meet the man where he was. What would Jesus do? You know what he did. We might wonder why, but we know what he did to that Samaritan. He got out of his lane, Jesus, and he had mercy on that man. Why? Because the man needed him, and he needed mercy. Jesus says about the relationship between the commandments and the gospel this: the Sabbath was made for man, ladies and gentlemen, not man for the Sabbath. And when someone's needs exceed the laws of the Sabbath, you break that law for the sake of the others, just as Jesus did. The law of God is subservient to the love and mercy of God. Well, was it worth it? That Jesus put himself at such personal risk? Especially his reputation as a rabbi? St. Luke tells us if it was worth it. He says, this man, when he saw that he'd been healed from his physical disease, returned full of gratitude. Wouldn't you like to be like that? Full of gratitude? Not only that, but it says that he was saved. Your English says, I know, he was healed. Sozo, he was saved. Saved from what? From having to be right. From protecting yourselves from those who aren't, in your view, right. This man, through Jesus' example, could now be free to be kind, which allowed him then to save people like Sandra and other strangers who stand in our need, who are dying on the borders of our land, and every divided community among us that is literally killing people day by day in the name of righteousness. Israel tried that, and they were destroyed. Lost their land in 587 BC and was gone until 1948. That's a big price to pay for self-righteousness. So the prophet Micah says to those people who judged books by covers, O mortal, what is good? What does the Lord require? Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Because if you don't, lives will continue to be lost simply because somebody got out of their lane. That somebody will eventually be you. If you receive this as the word of God, say amen.